We think you did something bad to Captain Amazing. We would like you to tell us where he is.
Captain who? This name does not ring any bells with me.
I don't like your tone, Frankenpuss. And do yourself a favor, don't punch my clock, because I'm a Pantera's box you do not want to open.
Welcome back to Thinking Critical. This is Wes, and it's that time of the week when I bring in my X-Men historian, the Marvel aficionado himself, Doc. What's going on, buddy?
Not too very much, sir. It's a very good morning, and I'm looking forward to talking to some X-Men with you.
Yeah, so this week was going to be a bit of a different This Week in X-Men. We were going to talk more about, all the comics, because I believe there's 5 or 6 of them that came out this week. A lot of really high-quality stuff out there. The only thing really of note that was news up until a couple of days ago was the giant-size X-Men tribute that they're going to put out with new artists basically recreating that comic book. But that's all out the window. We're here. We're going to talk about 10 of Swords, Swords of X, whatever they want to call it.
Yeah.
The big crossover event that's happening in the summer of 2020 should be launching out of the comic that's distributed on Free Comic Book Day from Marvel Comics. So are you as disappointed about this as I am?
You cannot, there is not a scale to measure the level of my disappointment. There is no scale that can reach that high. My level of disappointment is absolutely astounding. I sat there, I saw the announcement, and I said, "Are you effing kidding me? This is what you think is actually going to sell to anybody? You're going to take the X-Men and you're going to give them a bunch of swords. That's your crossover."
All right, so I'm not as upset about the crossover, the picture. I think the art's pretty cool. Seeing Cyclops with the lightsaber looks pretty interesting. It looks like Magic is wielding that sword that sealed Krakoa when Apocalypse and lost his his original 4 horsemen in the crevice, and he sealed it up and saved the day. Kind of silly, but I like fun. Whatever. That image didn't really bother me that much, but it obviously did not strike a good note with you.
First of all, I mean, let's start with the title. The title was terrible.
Very terrible.
X of Swords, 10 of Swords, Crossing of Swords. I don't know. I don't care that
it's not Fall of the Mutants, is it?
No, 10 of Swords. That's not English. I mean, maybe it's a reference to, I guess it's a reference to some tarot card, but it's a terrible name. You're going to have 10 mutants that get 10 different mystical or mythical swords from the Marvel Universe history, and they're going to stand around with swords. It doesn't
swashbuckling and maybe some sword play.
Okay, that's fine, but what does this tell me about anything? Extinction Agenda told me a name, told me a direction. Fall of the Mutants told me a direction. Executioner Song told me a direction. Age of Apocalypse, obviously a direction. But this is just words stuck together. No real idea of what the hell they're going to do. Okay, you got a bunch of cool swords. What the hell are you going to do with them other than fight other people with swords? For what purpose? What is the end goal here? And there's no indication of what that is. Okay, Magic's holding a sword that might be the one that came out of the ground with the whole Arakko, Krakoa split, but then Arakko's already back because
only part of it.
Yeah, okay, fine, but part of it's back and kind of banging Krakoa or whatever. The only hope is that this leads into something significantly bigger, but then we're back to the same issue with Marvel where you're having an event that's just the lead into another event, and I'm tired of events that are just prequel events to other events, and they keep doing it.
I want to break in here. I want to talk about what I find disappointing. It's 2 things, really. The first one is, so just recently, Jonathan Hickman said, you don't need to read the entire X-Men line. Read the comics that you want to read. This isn't meant to be read in order. They took out the reading order and all of that stuff, and I was like, good, because I've already dropped a bunch of them. I'm not reading Excalibur. I dropped Marauders because I thought that was silly. I didn't like the tone of the story, and I dropped New Mutants because the tone was all over the place. It would go from completely unreadable to pretty darn good, and I didn't like the change in qualities. So I've already dropped the titles that I wasn't really that interested in. We know Fallen Angels has already concluded its short run. It might come back, but now we're told this is going to be a 15-issue crossover event.
Yeah, and I mean, all they said was 15-issue event. I'm leaning towards crossover because outside of Wolverine, you still have X-Men, X-Force, New Mutants, Excalibur, and Marauders as kind of the 5 core ongoings. A lot of the other books are, either obvious miniseries or a series of one-shots. Like with Giant Size, it's kind of a series of one-shots. X+4 or 4X or whatever the hell it's called is it's a miniseries. A lot of the other announced ones, Hellions, probably a miniseries. X Factor, probably a miniseries. So what you're going to end up doing is you have 5 main books. It's a 15-part story that kind of gives me an indication that you're going to do either 3 issues of each title over 5 titles, or 5 issues out of each title over 3 titles. I mean, the math is just the way it works, unless there's a, just from understanding the history of how they've done these things. I don't think it's going to be its own little mini series. I think it's just going to be kind of a masthead across all of them. But you're back to being forced to read a bunch of books that you probably don't want to read.
No interest in.
Yeah. Especially with, I mean, come on. Okay. Hickman is all right. I mean, I'm getting a little more tired of his crap, and I'm leaning much more towards all of this just being kind of a, test run for all the stuff he's going to be doing in his Decorum book for Image. But regardless of that, if Tinny Howard is severely involved, that's an indication to me that this is going to, it's look, there's a handful of writers at Marvel that their name on a cover might as well be a trefoil sign. Don't open this door because the only thing you're going to get is cancer. Tinny Howard is one of those writers that you just avoid at all cost. And now it's going to be, oh, you can't avoid her at all, by the way. Sorry. Enjoy. And they have an expectation that we're going to keep reading. And I for one will not. I will only read the books that I'm still reading. And if I'm missing part of a crossover, oh well.
So here's my thing. So I disagree with you on Hickman. I think his X-Men started out pretty boring, and I was not impressed. I was actually a little bit distressed even. But the last 3 issues I have enjoyed very much. It feels like they're very much in line with what he did with House of X Powers of 10. I've enjoyed him a lot. I can see why people could have a little consternation with the direction. I think it's cool that he has taken the X-Men. They're no longer the perpetual victims in all of this, and maybe they're a little bit more the victimizers now, and they're taking a different stance. Whether that has to do with Krakoa manipulating them or something along those lines, or maybe Charles himself has been corrupted, down to his soul, something like that, which I do believe is part of it. I like that they've taken them away from being, forever victims and doing something new with them. I think it's interesting. I like the direction. And I do think Hickman's last 3 issues were great. I did enjoy Giant Size X-Men, Jean Grey, Emma Frost, even though it wasn't a Jean Grey, Emma Frost story, really. You learned nothing about those 2 characters. You learned stuff about Storm. It was certainly an homage to Morrison's silent issue in New X-Men. But I enjoyed that because I thought the art from Russell Dowderman was really good. But I'm not going to be forced into reading Tinny Howard. I already tried it. I gave Excalibur 2 or 3 issues, and it was just as bad as everything else she's ever written at Marvel Comics. Terrible characterization, terrible plotting and pacing. The dialogue is virtually unreadable. She's a terrible writer. You can't make me read this, and I'm different than you. I'm a bit more of an a-hole when it comes to all this stuff. If you want to try and make me read something by a creator I don't like, I will just drop everything.
I don't disagree with you at all on that. Like if I pick up my issues of, X-Force, I'm just dropping Marauders now. I haven't, so I'll be left with X-Force, X-Men, and New Mutants. And if I have to pick up those 3 issues and I have to see Tinny Howard's name on the cover, I think those are the last 3 issues I buy. Because, yeah, I just won't read her stuff. And Marvel needs to either stop trying to make her a thing, because she's never going to be a competent writer. And I think they think that if they just keep sticking her in stuff, eventually people either become desensitized to her or just learn to take it.
I read Thanos #1. She made Thanos not interesting.
Yeah. How do you make Thanos not interesting?
Good
that
question.
Takes actual, you know what? I mean, look, I will give her credit. She has the talent to make everything as dull as watching paint dry. Which, hey, you know what? It takes a special kind of writer to make even the most exciting things as dull as watching paint dry. She manages to do it. So she's one that, okay, let's even say the premise of this was interesting, and that the X-Men, or, well, mutants, because again, I'm tired of calling these people X-Men. They are not. They are not the X-Men. They are just
really heroes.
No, they are X-Nation at this point. I'm even if we agreed that the principle, the premise of this story of them running around with a bunch of mystical swords was actually interesting, which to me it isn't. I think it could be all right, but I think the general premise is bland until they give me something more. Even if we took the idea that was interesting, she would find a way to make 10, like the 10 biggest, most mystical swords of Marvel boring.
Yeah, she's got a series with Gambit and Rogue, and Apocalypse is 3 of the main characters, and it's boring. Enough said.
Yeah.
It's one of the interesting things when they announced Dawn of X and the creators that were going to be associated with it, there was a feeling it was like, okay, there's some creators here I don't really like with these titles, but with Jonathan Hickman guiding the ship and providing mentorship and oversight, he's probably going to be able to smooth off some of the rough edges, and these are going to be much better as far as quality writing. That has not turned out to be the case. Tinny Howard's just as bad as I ever expected her to be. Jerry Duggan is just as unreadable when he's trying to do something funny. And in fact, Ed Brisson, who I thought was the only good X-Men writer before Hickman arrived, it kind of fell apart on New Mutants. That thing was terrible under Hickman's leadership. Ben Percy's doing a good job, with X-Force and Wolverine, but Ben Percy's always been a good writer in my mind. I've always enjoyed his writing. I never had a doubt about that. But these other writers that I thought were suspect, that I knew would have issues, the bloom is off the rose as far as the idea that Jonathan Hickman's oversight and mentorship is going to be able to correct some of the issues some of these writers have.
Oh, absolutely. And I think that his mentorship is significantly less existent than we all hoped it would be. I think it's still, ukulele boy running that ship, and he just doesn't have any say in the creative direction. Because I still think that this has become something that we didn't expect it to be, which is Jonathan Hickman comes up with interesting ideas that he hands off to significantly less competent, if not outright incompetent writers, so that they can explore those ideas in very bland and disappointing other series.
We got Vita Ayala coming up. I thought maybe she turned the corner when I read that Wonder Woman 750 story that she had. Definitely not the case. I read Nebula. That was just as bad as most everything else I've read from Vita Ayala. We got Leah Williams on another X-Men comic. X Factor is going to be guaranteed to be unreadable. She's been proven to be wanting when it comes to writing X-Men. It's going to be just as bad as, what was it, Extremist, whatever it was that she ruined in Age of X-Men, which is hard. That was such a bad event to be the lowest hanging fruit. The person who wrote the very worst X-Men story in Age of X-Men was quite the accomplishment.
But at the end of the day, I think the editing is still ukulele boy over there. Jordan White and his, incompetent editing. A ukulele, a weird mustache, and
One of the
editing.
pillars of the Legion of Doofuses.
And bad editing. Being he's a guy that failed upward into his position because
Rob Liefeld called him out big time on it a few weeks ago. I thought it was amazing.
Oh God, yeah. Like if there's one guy that's willing to actually call out the terribleness, it's Rob. And he's most of the time going to be pretty right. You have a handful of woefully inadequate writers that are getting no guidance from an actually competent writer, and they're still getting guidance from they're getting creative direction, but not guidance on how to get, how to explore that direction from a competent writer, and any sort of proficiency that they would need corrected in is getting corrected by a guy that still couldn't edit his way out of a paper bag.
And he also pitched the Age of X-Men idea.
Yeah.
If you don't get fired for that, I don't know what gets you fired nowadays. That's complete incompetence.
And we expect this to be a successful event. Why? Give me something.
That's my thing also. I have no confidence in Marvel being able to execute an event at this scale, even with Jonathan Hickman involved. They haven't done anything. Now, I liked Absolute Carnage. It was a prelude to another event. And I liked Absolute Carnage because it was like 5 issues. And there were a couple of tie-ins to Venom that I read, and that was it. And I was able to get a complete story. I have to go 15 comics spanning 3 or 5 different series with Tini Howard as a driving creative force. No confidence whatsoever.
Oh yeah, there is absolutely no way in hell that I would have any hope that this is going to turn into anything but a train wreck.
It's expensive train wreck, man. That's like
you're
50
looking
to $70, depending on how much they want to bend us over on this thing.
Yeah, you're looking at anywhere from it'd be anything from 60 to 75. No, there is no way in hell that I'm signing on for a 15-part event that maybe have the story by a guy like Hickman, but the dialogue and everything else done by Tini Howard.
And we know she created a stupid name as well. That was in the press release. I don't know why they would be bragging about that because the name was awful. So, Doc, we've been talking about this for a little bit of time now. Just to wrap things up, I'm not as disappointed in the promo art. You have a bunch of mutants with silly swords. We got some lightsabers, some interesting little Easter eggs or teasers in there.
Let's be honest. Mark Brooks can make anything, no matter how bland, look cool.
That's whatever. That's fine. That doesn't even give us enough information on what the event is. But the information that they did provide was just so underwhelming, so disappointing. 15-part story, going to be far too expensive. I have no confidence that Marvel, even with Hickman there, can execute that at the scale of any type of quality that I would want to read. And then Tini Howard's name being attached to it as a prominent creative voice in the project, that is a stop sign for me. That is a no-go. That is a barrier to entry for me as a reader in my wallet.
The only thing that I can hope out of this is she only has 15 issues left on her exclusive, and this is their way of burning them off.
Yeah, she can go back to Humanoids or Black Mask or O&I or whatever crap.
Yeah, I don't care where she goes. Yeah, Black Mask. I don't care. Just not the X-Men. Not the X-Men, not Thanos, not anything that anyone cares about.
When the finer details do come out, maybe I'll be all in on this, but from what is available, it feels like this might be a jumping off point for X-Men for me. Because like I said, I'm not going to go buy a part of a story when I'm not going to read the rest of the story. That's a waste of my money. We'll see how we all feel at this. Doc, with our waning interest in X-Men, is This Week in X-Men going to be a thing next week?
I guess there's not much coming. I don't think there's much coming out this week. Yeah, I guess. I mean, it'll probably.
You're not ready to kill it yet because This Week in X-Men isn't a thing without the Doc.
I know. No. We'll keep it going. I mean, because at the very least, the worst that happens is we do like 2 months of reviewing. I will literally go and just start reviewing stuff from like March of 1990 instead of 2020. We'll just subtract 30 years and act like it's new stuff.
All right, Doc. Well, I do want to say, if you're a viewer and you're disappointed about the negative reaction to Ten of Swords, you don't know this channel, and you certainly don't know Doc or myself. There was no way that was ever going to get us excited. You're talking about oodles and oodles of bad, as far as the rollout and the teaser along with this, and them's the breaks. Like, there was no way when they put that out that this channel and Doc were ever going to be like, oh, this looks great, because it doesn't look great. It actually looks quite suspect and quite possibly terrible.
Yeah, come on, give me something. Tell me something. 10 people standing around with swords and no direction for where those swords are going to get used seems really, really underwhelming to me.
All right, Doc. Thanks a lot. We've been in enough. It's time to get the hell out of here.
Absolutely.
If you enjoyed this video, please give it a like. I would appreciate it very much. It helps us attract more views for the channel. Subscribe for future commentary, comic book news, and reviews. And don't forget to ring the bell for notifications. If you want to talk comics, movies, and much, much more, you can follow me on Twitter at Wes_from_TC. With that, Salamat Po, and I'm out.